My wife secretly inherited $400, $0 from her late uncle, and convinced me to put it into a joint account. Then she drained it all to buy a beachfront house with her affair partner. Now she's suing me for half the property we never agreed on. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this. But here I am, sitting in my living room, staring at the mess that's my life now. It all started with something so innocent. My wife, Emily, always acting a bit off lately, but I figured it was just stress or work. Turns out it was something way worse. The biggest shock. She inherited $400, $0 from her late uncle, and she convinced me to put it into a joint account. I didn't think much of it at the time, just a way to save and maybe invest. But I should have known something was wrong from the start. Emily is the kind of woman who's always been manipulative, a master at hiding her true self behind that sweet, bitchy smile. She's pretty, sure, but her attitude can turn icy in a second. Over the past few months, she'd become more secretive. Her phone was always locked. She'd disappear into the bedroom for hours, and when I'd ask about her day, she'd brush me off with some excuse about work stress or needing me time. I thought maybe I was just imagining things, but then I stumbled across something that made my blood run cold. One night I was working late on some reports, and Emily had gone out to meet her friends. I was tired, so I decided to look through her phone. I know, big mistake, but I couldn't help it. And there I found it. Texts. Flirty, suggestive texts. Not just general, hey, how are you, stuff, but outright sexual conversations with some guy named Jake. They'd been talking for months apparently, and the way she described their meetups, things she'd never told me, made me feel like I'd been hit by a truck. It wasn't just an affair, it was a full-blown sex relationship. My stomach dropped. I felt sick, angry, betrayed. How could she do this? How could she lie so easily? I never imagined Emily, the woman I married, could be capable of this level of deception. And what made it worse was the money. I knew she'd been acting. Weird about the inheritance, but she'd always said she wanted to invest it wisely. Turns out she drained the account, the $400, $0, without telling me. I found out from the bank statement she left on the kitchen table, her handwriting scrawled over the recent transactions, buying herself a beachfront house with her lover. A house I had no idea she was planning to buy, let alone with money that was supposed to be ours. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back, not just emotionally but financially too. All those plans we'd made, all the future I thought we had, gone. I kept thinking about how she lied, how she convinced me to trust her with everything. And then the anger started to boil over. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew I needed a plan. I needed to understand what the hell was going on before I said anything. I needed to know just how deep her betrayal went. That night I sat in the dark trying to process what I'd uncovered. My mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts colliding. How she'd lied about her feelings, about our future, about the money. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and honestly a bit stupid for not seeing the signs earlier. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I'd have to face her soon, and I had to be ready. Whatever her excuses, I was done being the fool. I was going to get to the bottom of this, and I was going to make her pay for what she'd done. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding head and a mind that wouldn't stop racing. I had the evidence, but I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed to think carefully about my next move. Emily was home, acting normal, too normal, honestly, like nothing had happened. She was in the kitchen, humming some tune, pouring coffee as if her world hadn't just crumbled around her. I watched her, feeling this strange mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she pretend everything was fine when she'd been sneaking around, lying to my face? I decided I'd catch her off guard. Not in a hostile way, but I needed her to slip up. I started acting normal, asking about her day, pretending I didn't know about the texts or the money, but inside I was simmering with anger. I couldn't believe she'd lied for so long, convinced me everything was perfect. Meanwhile, she was living a double life, planning a new future with some guy she barely knew while I was clueless. I also couldn't ignore the money. The inheritance was supposed to be for us, for our future, for building something together. Instead, she drained it all, spent it on a beachfront house with her lover. I knew I had to get proof, concrete proof, before I did anything drastic. I started digging deeper. Her bank accounts, her emails, her social media, anything that might tell me more. I found receipts for deposits into her new account, pictures of her with Jake at that beach house, and even some messages where she talked about finally leaving everything behind with him. The more I found out, the more I realized how much she'd planned this. She lied about her inheritance, convinced me to put the money in a joint account, then drained it all to run off with her lover. She'd been manipulating me from the start. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for thinking we had a future. But what hurt the most was knowing she'd played me for a sucker, all while smiling at me, pretending to be the perfect wife. I decided I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed to confront her, but I wanted to do it smart. I started recording our conversations secretly, just in case. I also contacted a lawyer to understand my rights, especially about the money and the house she was claiming as hers. I knew she was going to spin this, lie her way out of it, say I was crazy or jealous or whatever. Emily always had a way of twisting the truth to her advantage. That afternoon, I finally decided to ask her about the texts and the money. I sat her down, trying to keep my voice steady. I showed her the bank statements, the receipts, the messages. Her reaction was priceless. She froze, then smiled, that same bitchy smile she always had. She told me I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that I had no right to accuse her of anything. She claimed the texts were just harmless flirtation, that Jake was just a friend. She insisted she never meant to hurt me, that I was overreacting, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt a mixture of rage, sadness, and disappointment. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray everything we built together? I looked at her, and for a moment I saw a stranger, someone I once loved, now just a manipulative, self-absorbed liar. I realized I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I had to protect myself, my money, and my future. I knew that whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to everything I'd uncovered, her lies, the money gone, the house she bought with Jake, her total disregard for everything we once had. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs. Was I blind, naive, or just too trusting? Honestly, I think I was just comfortable believing in her, in us. Now I saw the cold truth. Emily had been planning this for months, maybe longer. The next morning, I knew I had to get serious. I couldn't just sit around and wait for her to spin some other lie. I had proof now, and I needed legal advice. I reached out to a lawyer specializing in divorce and financial disputes. I explained everything: the inheritance, the joint account, her draining all the money, the beachfront house, the texts with Jake. The lawyer listened carefully, then told me I had a strong case for divorce and for reclaiming some of the money she had taken. I felt a tiny spark of relief. At least I wasn't completely screwed. But I also knew Emily would fight dirty. She always had a way of twisting things around, making herself the victim. That bitch. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time with a plan. I'd record our conversation, lay out all the evidence, and make her face the reality of what she'd done. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be played anymore. So I set up a hidden voice recorder and called her into the living room. I kept my composure, but inside I was seething. I told her I knew everything about the texts, the money, the house. Her face twisted into that familiar bitchy expression, but I kept going. I told her I was done being manipulated, that I was filing for divorce, and that I wanted her to leave the house. She started to cry, claiming she was sorry, that she loved me, that it was all a mistake, but I wasn't buying it. Sorry wasn't good enough after everything she'd done. She tried to blame me, said I was paranoid, jealous, insecure. She threw out some classic lines. You don't understand how hard I've been, you're overreacting. And I never cheated, I just flirted, and you're making this all up. I just stared at her, feeling the rage boil over. How many times had I trusted her? How many times had she lied straight to my face? I told her she could pack her bags and leave. I was done with her manipulations, her lies, her betrayal. That moment was the breaking point. Watching her scramble, trying to deny everything, I realized I'd been a fool for so long. I thought I knew her, but she was just a con artist in a designer dress, playing her game. I could feel the tears welling up, but I fought them back. I knew I had to stay strong for myself. I had to start planning my next move, get my finances in order, and figure out how to rebuild my life without her. Looking back now, I see how everything spiraled out of control so fast. One day, I was just a guy married to his wife, thinking we had a future. The next, I was discovering she'd been cheating, stealing, and planning a whole new life with her lover. It's like I woke up in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. But I also know this isn't the end. It's the start of something new, something I never wanted, but maybe, just maybe, I'll come out of this stronger. After she left that day, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. My house, once full of life and plans for our future, suddenly felt empty and cold. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where she used to sit, and for the first time in years, I felt completely alone. The worst part, I knew I'd never trust her again, not really. All the lies, the betrayal, she'd shattered whatever little faith I had left in us. I started digging into her financial accounts again, trying to get a clearer picture of how much she'd actually taken. It turned out she'd drained the joint account completely, every last cent of that inheritance, plus some of our savings I didn't even know existed. She used some of it to buy the beachfront house with Jake, and I found out she'd even transferred money into an offshore account, probably to hide her tracks. I was furious, not just at her but at myself for being so blind. How could I have missed all the signs? How did I let her manipulate me for so long? I also contacted a forensic accountant to help trace the missing money. They confirmed what I suspected, that she'd been siphoning funds for months, planning her escape. It was a sickening feeling knowing she'd been cheating on me and stealing from us at the same time. All the while, I kept asking myself, why? Why was she doing this? Was I just not enough? Did she ever love me? Or was I just a convenient pawn in her game? I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with everything. I filed for divorce, and I also started gathering more evidence, screenshots, bank statements, emails, anything that could support my case. The lawyer told me I had a good chance of reclaiming some of the money, especially since she'd openly lied about her inheritance and lied about the house being bought with her own money. Her lies were piling up, and I could see her trying to spin things her way, but I had enough proof to undo her. Meanwhile, I also decided to confront her one last time before the divorce went through. I wanted her to know I wasn't going down without a fight. I called her and she answered with that fake sweet tone she always used when she was trying to manipulate me. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the house, and that she was done. I told her I was going to take her to court and I was going to do everything in my power to get back what she stole. Her reaction was pure classic Emily. She burst into tears, claiming she made a mistake, that she loved me and that she was sorry. But I didn't buy it, not one bit. I told her if she loved me, she'd come clean about everything, but she just kept crying and lying. She insisted she never cheated, that Jake was just a friend, that the money was just a gift from her uncle, and that she was trying to fix things. Yeah, right. All I saw was a manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with everything. I told her she needed to leave the house, that I was done playing her game, and that I would fight for what's rightfully mine. That day, I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. Relief that I finally had some answers, and despair because I realized how deep her betrayal went. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a thief, and an unfaithful wife. I knew I'd have to start over, rebuild my life from scratch, but for now I was just trying to breathe, trying to process everything. I'd lost a lot, but I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. After she left that day, I felt like I'd stepped into a different world. My house, once filled with her voice and her presence, was now eerily quiet. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where she used to sit, trying to grasp how everything had fallen apart so fast. The betrayal cut deep. She'd lied about her inheritance, drained our savings, bought a house with her lover, and all the while pretended everything was fine. It was like waking up from a nightmare, but the nightmare was real, and I was in the middle of it. I knew I had to act quickly. I couldn't let her get away with everything. I contacted a lawyer specializing in family law and financial disputes. I explained everything: the inheritance, the joint account, her draining all the money, the house she bought with Jake, and her lies about the affair. The lawyer listened carefully and confirmed I had a solid case to fight for the money and to challenge her claims on the house. It felt somewhat empowering to finally have a plan, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace the missing funds. They confirmed she'd been siphoning money for months, transferring it offshore, moving it into secret accounts, all to fund her new life with Jake. The betrayal was even worse than I'd imagined. She lied about everything, even the inheritance, claiming she'd inherited it all herself, then convincing me to put it into a joint account. She manipulated me from the start, and I'd been too blind to see it. I decided I couldn't let her get away with it. I prepared to confront her again, but this time with concrete evidence. I recorded our conversation secretly, just in case. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to be played anymore. The next day, I called her to meet at the house. When she arrived, I laid everything out on the table: bank statements, receipts, her texts with Jake. Her reaction was classic Emily. She froze, then tried to deny everything, claiming I was paranoid and jealous. She insisted she never cheated, that Jake was just a friend, and that the money was a gift from her uncle. I told her I knew the truth, that she'd been cheating on me for months, draining our savings and buying a house with her lover. Her face twisted into that familiar manipulative sneer, but I didn't back down. I told her she could pack her bags and leave, that this was the end of the line. She burst into tears, claiming she loved me, that she'd made a mistake, that she was sorry, but I saw right through her. Sorry doesn't erase the years of lies and betrayal. I told her that if she really loved me, she'd come clean, but instead she kept crying and lying. I had enough. I told her she needed to leave the house and that I was filing for divorce. The look she gave me, so full of contempt, made me realize I'd been played for a fool. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with everything. That night, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I finally knew the truth, and sadness for what I'd lost. I spent the night going over everything, trying to process the betrayal. I knew I'd have to rebuild my life, start over from scratch, but I was determined not to let her get the last laugh. I'd fight for my rights, reclaim what was mine, and move forward. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew deep down it was the only way to find some peace. In the days that followed, everything felt like a blur. I went through the motions, packing up her things, dealing with lawyers, sorting out the house. The whole process was brutal. Every time I looked at the house, I saw her face, her lies, her betrayal. It was a constant reminder of how badly I'd been played. But despite the pain, I knew I had made the right choice. I refused to let her manipulate or destroy me any longer. I managed to get a court order to freeze her offshore accounts and demanded an accounting of all the money she'd drained. It was a long, messy legal battle, but I was determined to get back what was owed to me, what she had stolen. In the meantime, I moved out of the house into a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt like I was beginning to breathe again. The house with the beachfront view now belongs to her and Jake, and honestly, I don't care anymore. She can have her new life. I've learned a lot through this nightmare about trust, deception, and the importance of staying vigilant. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes love isn't enough. People can surprise you, and not always in good ways. Looking back, I realize I was naive to think I knew her, to think we had a future. But I also understand now that I can rebuild from this. It's going to take time, and I'll carry the wounds of her betrayal for a while, but I won't let this define me. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about reclaiming my life and dignity. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags. And if someone betrays you like this, don't be afraid to fight for what's yours, emotionally, financially, whatever it takes. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and you're stronger than you think. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity. I learned that I deserve better, and I will find it. Life's too short to be with someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates. I'm moving on, and I'm finally ready to start over, better, wiser, and more cautious than ever before.